In this lesson we are going to talk about motion capturing and cappuccino. And some of you may think that cappuccino has all to do with drinking coffee, but actually in Cine 4D, this guy, this cappuccino guy that is found under character manager menu, is actually a really rudimentary motion capturing tool. So let me show you that first before we proceed to something a little bit more interesting. And before we do some motion capturing, let me first describe you how this Cappuccino guy works. Well, basically records every move I make with my mouse or tablet or whatever you are using to interact with Cine 4D. So let's create a certain object because you have to have an object which Cappuccino will record. So let's maybe use a null object, so it's a little bit less distracting. Let's use maybe a sphere here, change the orientation, and let's increase this a little bit, let's say 20, and we will change the color so it's a little bit more vivid in the viewport, so maybe this orange, and that's good enough. So let's say that I want to record manually some movement of this guy, so, and we will do it in the front view, and I chose this front view because I think it will be a little bit easier to demonstrate. So let's fire up that Cappuccino and we will get this floating window. Let's maybe put it to a side here, all the way to the left. Now, this single keyframe button means exactly the action which is the same as recording a keyframe. So that's not really interesting, but what is interesting is this start real-time guy that will start recording keyframes for every given frame when we start any action in the viewport. But before that, let's just quickly go over this. So we will tell it in which range to record. So we are currently saying the project length, and that is this value here, so 90 frames, and that is okay, let's leave it. We are also instructing it to start at this current time. This rewind time simply instructs Cine 4D to go back to the beginning once you are finished with recording, and this what simply means what do you want to record, and in this case let's just go with the position. So we will just record the position of this object. Now when I hit this start real time, nothing will happen until I do any sort of action. So if I move this guy, you will see the time is progressing and I'm recording the keys. So how about that? It effectively captured the motion of my hand, and I'm using a tablet so I can be more precise than with a mouse. So imagine doing this by hand. This would probably take you 10 times more than it did take for me using this motion capturing tool. Now, there are some things to know. If you hit start real time again and do any action in the viewport, it will start recording once again. Okay, so it will effectively remove all the keys that were recorded previously. Now, there is one little thing also. This Cappuccino tool, for some reason, doesn't really like to add a key to the first frame. So if you really need that first key, for some reason, you can add it manually. Of course, the animation made this way can be edited, and that's really great. So with this tool, you can effectively create really complex motion in just a fraction of the time you would need otherwise. But it comes with a penalty, and that penalty is it records a keyframe, this key value for every single frame. So that's a lot of keys to work with, and I really suggest that if you will be experimenting with this tool, and I will show you one really neat usage of this, is to use animation capabilities of Cine 4D within this functions menu, and you have to naturally select that object. So there is one guy here called key reducer. So let's run that guy and we will get a really geeky, oddly named controls here. So that's really geeky stuff, but Let me just scale this a little bit so you can see this. Now let's try to read that. So reduction Fourier and reduction inflection, well, that is really fancy and geeky, but you really don't have to worry about that as long as you understand what these guys do. Both of these guys will try to intelligently reduce the number of keys using some smart algorithms that are built into them, and this first method is a little bit aggressive, and this other one is a little bit more reliable, in a lack of a better term. So if you increase this guy, watch how the keys are beginning to disappear in the timeline. Hope you can see that. Let me even pull this guy so you can see, watch this, how those keys are disappearing. So now you have reduced the number of keys, but the result is not really satisfying. So let's undo that. Let's try with a really small increments. Let's try 10%. So really small values work the best, but often if you have a really complex curve and if one method fails, go with another. So let's try 1 here, maybe 2. So this is not really what we were hoping for, but it's much better than this. Okay, so if this doesn't help you, you can manually exclude the keys you want to keep. So that's one way. Another way is to use this simplify command found under functions menu, which will do just that. This is also a little bit geeky, but let's try to simplify this simplify command. This value guy means that this tool will try to reduce and remove any key that has different value from the next key by this amount. I really hope that makes sense. And this guy means, well, if you enter, for example, 10 here and hit OK, it will basically leave every 10th frame. So you'll naturally lose the original motion unless you, for example, take that curve and soften it to really preserve that appearance. But this tool also works on selection of keys, so any way you put it with any motion capturing file, given one that is made this way by hand, or very complex motion capturing file that you will be importing in Cine 4D, will contain a large amount of keys. And for every motion capturing work, you will have to reduce the keys, and often there is a lot of manual work, but Cine 4D also offers some interesting tools. Here, let me just select this guy and hit H, and look how many keys are recorded for our position tracks. That is a really large amount. The first thing we can do for this example is to remove the Z value. We have no depth. You see the keys are constantly 0, so you can select all, simply delete. So now you have basically just 2 curves. So anything that you can optimize, remove without losing the original animation appearance, it is a really good idea. And Cine 4D really offers a multitude of animation tools. So for example, under this F curve, you can work in this F curve mode with reduced modification mode. Now, when you enable that, here is what you will get. You see these little blue guys? Those are the original curves. Now, you haven't deleted any keys, but Cine 4D just intelligently tried to maintain the overall shape of the curve and gave you a new curve to work with, which is actually a reduced one, and it behaves completely the same as the regular one. So you could really try to match those curves, but that won't happen because you are actually modifying the original curve this way. So the basic intention behind this tool is to give you a reduced curve which will affect these complicated curves. I hope you can see this due to recording. There is a thin blue curve behind this red one and also this green one, but let's actually switch just to one. It will be much easier to show what I mean. And there is also one little nifty tool in Scene 4D. Let's first get out of this reduced modification mode, and we are back to the full curve, and that tool is called snapshot tool. That means that you can record the shape of this guy as it is now. Let's frame this all like this. So if you go here to F-curve menu, you can make a snapshot. So create snapshot. Now if I move these guys, for example, you can see I have the original curve snapshot here. So that basically means that I can maybe select a few of these keys and delete them, or maybe delete a few of these guys and still have this as a guide for my curve. So now I'm actually manually removing the keys. I hope that makes sense, and you want to remove any excess information and work with minimal amount of data. So you see I'm following this guy behind. So it's basically tracing the snapshot, but with minimum amount of keys. So hope that makes sense. And it's often like this with motion capturing files of all sorts. Okay, I hope that is clear enough, and that will help you clearing up those heavy files, because if you have so many keys, that is a nightmare to work with, and it can really bog down your system if you have motion capturing files that last over a minute or 2 or even 3 minutes. That is a serious hit on processing power of your machine. Now let me just scale this a little bit. So you're trying to keep your curve with minimum amount of keys. Let's go back. Also, I hope you will appreciate the fact that this is a volume training that is mostly targeted at this new character / builder and this C motion guy. So I really cannot go in depth with all these animation capabilities inside Scene 4D, but I really hope I gave you enough to work with. Now let's actually create completely new animation for our guy. So let's go to maybe our C motion, and let's start our Cappucino like this, and we will start it real time, and we will create something funny. Let's say something like this. So it goes like this, and let's say that this is okay. Not really. Let's try again. So maybe something like spinning vortex, something like this. Maybe this could work, so it's really recognizable. And now let's say that when you are satisfied that you want to use this motion for an object that is in C motion. So first you want to bake this to a motion clip. So we will add a motion clip, define some parameters. So this will be called motion source vortex. We will remove included animation from original object. We will create the motion clip, and we will just record position information of this null object. So let's hit OK, and there you go. And if we switch to our animation menu, you will see that we have our motion source vortex guy here, but we also have this motion source vortex here, just as we had for our female character. Now, the reason why I'm showing you all this is because I mentioned in one of the lessons here under C motion that you can add an motion action to your object which is inside C motion. So let's create maybe a Mocap text like this, and let's go to perspective view, and let's write maybe C4D like this. Click off so it will refresh. Now I will select my C motion guy and drop the Mocap text inside. Now I want to apply this motion which I recorded on completely another object to my Mocap text. Now I can also delete this, and to do that you simply add this motion action and hit add, select it, and inside this slot you have to pull this motion source guy. like this. You see we have a little bit of a movement. Now, if I hit play, that letters will simply do that motion, and they will do that motion in this amount of time. So this guy is recorded in 90 frames originally, and its length is 90 frames, but C-Motion is instructing it to do that motion in 30 frames. So let's go 90 here, that is the original motion, and let's hit play. So how about that? That is awesome possibility in C-Motion. So just imagine the possibilities. You can also access everything from these guys. So you could maybe add a parameter action and choose maybe, let's say, maybe height. And you can control that height maybe with a sine wave. And I think the original value is 200 by default for Vertex. So let's try 200 and let's see how that works. So how about that? You can do crazy stuff. I will go in minus here. Maybe I will flip the spline so it will appear like this, and just imagine the possibilities. This is absolutely fantastic. This C-Motion guy deserves a menu of its own. It's that powerful and that valuable, and yet for some unknown reason Maxon decides to stuff it here under character menu. That's a complete mystery to me. Now let's try something a little bit more serious. So let's get rid of everything and let's go to our startup layout like this, and let me import a motion capturing file, and you can find those in various flavors, but let's first merge it to a scene, because if I go open, it will simply open it as a separate file. So let's actually merge it into this scene, and there is this FBX file. So let's hit open, and it will ask me for some settings, and let's hit OK without setting anything here. So now I will get another window, and you can see that we have a default range built into it. So always choose this default guy. So it's from 0 to almost 3 seconds, and it comes from mixamo.com, which is a website that really provides with a variety of motion capture files in this specific format version, but more about that later. Let's hit OK, and this is what you will get in the viewport. Let's first hit play, and you see we have some sort of punching motion from the skeleton, and this is live action recorded from a live human actor, so nothing comes close to it, and the nature of the motion is really realistic and natural, so you cannot really fake that, and you immediately recognize that this is a live movement. There is no mistake about it. Now, first, when you open any motion capture file, and if I control click this little guy, it will expand the complete hierarchy. You get this joint hierarchy, which is really scary, and first thing is to organize things a bit. Now let me go briefly to animation layout and show you what to do if you have motion capture files that have position values recorded. Now let's actually get rid of this motion source, we don't need it. Now for motion capture files, if they have position value recorded, and that position values are recorded for any other joint except this main joint here, this hips controller, you can freely delete them. So for example, you can see that this spine doesn't have position values recorded, only the hips joint. Now these Mixamo files come in that way. They do have only position values recorded on the hips joint only, but other flavors, relatively speaking, have position values recorded for other joints, and you can freely delete them. So that is your first optimization. The second thing you want to do is that you want to delete anything that you won't use. So let's get back to our standard layout, and for example, I won't be using anything of this head joints here, so you can maybe select this joint here and we will use the neck. So let's delete everything below it. So let's hit delete, and we will have less information to work with, and the animation is still here, but only the part we will use. Now let's go back. We also have some null objects here. You can see like this Carl left hand thumb, and actually we can get rid of this name prefix. So let's select all with middle click, go here to tools, naming tool, and let's replace Carl with nothing. So that will effectively remove that Carl prefix, and we could also get rid of this null guy. So we can do that easily by hitting this guy here and right clicking these nulls by simply going edit, delete. So how about that? That was a little bit fast. I hope I haven't lost anyone. And now we have only the joint hierarchy, and we can collapse that by control clicking. So it will collapse everything beneath. And now we will try to transfer this animation to our custom made rig. Now there are a lot of potential problems you can hit, so let's first build a simple mocap rig, and there is one template called Mocap, so motion capturing, that will offer you some pre-made rigs that are exclusively built for various flavors of motion capturing. So in this drop-down menu we have mix some guys, so let's go with that. We'll create an arm, or arms to be more correct. We will create legs, and let's even create hands like this. And you can see that this rig is almost identical to this motion capturing rig we have, and in fact we can group it and rename it mocap data. And it is always a good idea to organize things as best as you can. And if I just switch this character display to full hierarchy like this, you'll see that the naming conventions used in this rig, so hips, spine, spine 1, and so on, are the same as in this guy. So the joint structure and the overall structure of this hierarchy is completely the same. So that is a great advantage to us, because we don't have to create our character manually. Now let's switch back to components, and let me show you a simple way how to transfer this animation to our custom built rig. So first, here under object, you would have to switch to animate. So this guy will be in animation mode. And now when you select this pelvis guy, under controls, you will get this retarget controls. And already as a target is the hips joint, which you currently cannot see because it's hidden in the hierarchy, but it is already available here. So you just have to load the source, and the source of the movement is of course the motion captured data. So simply load hips here like this, and you will get this result. Now if you hit play, both of these guys will act the same, but their positions will not be the same. So let's stop this, go back. But you can counteract that by simply moving this character guy, and since all motion is driven by rotations, except this main pelvis joint, you can do that. Now there is one obvious problem that you will most certainly run into with motion capturing, is that in majority of cases you won't get this motion capture data to have this nice T-pose. And who says that the skeleton of your character will fit that nicely. Maybe it will be a little bit smaller, just as in this case. Let me show you that, because my skeleton is a little bit smaller, and that is not really a problem at this moment. But what if joint rotations on my main rig are oriented differently, so axes are pointing different ways? Now that would be a serious problem, because this motion capture would be basically instructing that let's just doodle that. So this motion capture rig would be saying that X is this way, so that would, in as far as this rig is concerned, be the proper direction. But what if my joint here in original position would point this way for X? So maybe you rotated your controller, repositioned your joint or something like that. That would be a serious issue, because then if you transfer this animation, your hand will be actually looking like this, which is first of all not possible, and it would look really ugly. So that is a big problem. Now, rarely you will get a perfect motion capture file that fits absolutely perfect to your character. Now, the biggest problem is adapting it to a rig that doesn't match. So let me show you a couple of ways you can do that. For that purpose, I will delete my doodle guy, this character, and will copy our female from another scene like this. And you see, we obviously have a problem. First is the position of the hand, so that doesn't match. Also, the size, the proportions doesn't match. I really hope you will be able to see this. Let me just disable the visibility of this, and that simply won't work. If we transfer the animation and we don't have any means via this retarget that we had in motion capturing file to transfer that animation, now that can become a real problem. Now, some people prefer to create negative keyframes, so they probably go to, let's say, -10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or so, and really pull those controllers of their rig to match this motion capture data, and they add a keyframe, and then they start the retarget process. Now, there is a retarget tag under character menu, and unfortunately you cannot see that because the screen is cut off, but it's there. But it's really basic, and the best way I found to transfer the animation data is to use pose morph tag, which is absolutely fantastic tool, as you will see. Now, as you can see, there is a lot of stuff in the viewport, and it's really difficult to determine what is what, so I always tend to ease the things up for myself. So let me select these joints of motion capture data and change the display to line, and let's set the display to circle, and let's maybe use custom size, maybe something like 2, and I will also change the color, and usually good idea is to use something really vivid, something like green, which is preferred. And now you're actually able to see that motion capture data. So if I hit play, this is what we have, and here under this little button, if I click and hold, I can disable this all frames. So Cine 4D won't play back all the frames, and therefore will give me a little bit smoother and faster playback. So let's try it like this, and I'm also recording, so that is really slowing things down. So let me show you how to do that. Now, what you want to do is to switch the display of your main rig to controllers. Now, the reason why I want you to use controllers is that it will filter all these controllers, and it will be easier to work with. Now, let's start maybe with our master controller, so this guy, and there is this root underscore con plus. Now what I want to do is actually to constrain it, so I will add a constraint position and rotation, because this spine controller, the main root of this motion capture data, has position information recorded. So under offset, I will say maintain original because I want to maintain the original position. I don't want this guy to snap to that main hips controller. Okay, so let's load in hips like this, and now I actually transferred the animation. This will look a little bit odd, so only my hip will be following. Let's just hide the motion capture data, and you see my main controller is moving, and it's moving from its own position. It didn't change, so it won't change any rig that is binded to it. I really hope that makes sense. So you can do the same for, let's say, this left arm. We'll add a constraint, once again position and rotation constraint, because if we make motion capture data visible, you see that this controller here is actually on another position. This will be really visible if I, for example, tune down the strength of our constraint and find that joint. So actually I can do a picking session, which is this guy, so I can enable this tool and pick interactively which guy I want to use. So there is this left hand. So now actually constrain my controller of my female rig to this guy. So if I increase the strength of constraint, I will effectively move this toward this position. So you can clearly see that. So now let me put all the way to 100%, and here is the issue that I was telling about. So it's actually enable the visibility, and the problem is that the joints rotations don't match, and there is a big problem. Now you can counteract that with these guys here. So you will offset the rotation, so minus 90 in this case, and you will get much better results. So you'll see we have our controllers that we constrained are actually moving according to motion capture data. Now you can clearly see the problem. In certain situation, our hand is oriented properly, but you would also have to constrain these poles and of course all the rest of the controllers. Now this is a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial, because this would require for me to build a complete retargeting solution with espresso and constraints for my motion capture data, and that is quite complicated. But let's just, for the sake of this lesson, maybe finish the legs and the arms. So we will go a little bit more with this rig. So actually I will select all the controllers that don't have this constraint tag already, and add a constraint tag, which I will naturally use, and activate PSR and activate maintain original as my default values, which I can of course change, and I could even hide the rig like this, so it will be easier for me to pick these guys from motion capture in picking session. So let's go with the right leg first, and picking session we are looking for this right foot, and let's test it like this, and it's moving. Let's go a step further and do the same thing for our left leg. So I will maintain the original position rotation. In this case we can go with both, and once again picking session, and I'm looking for a left foot, and let's give it a try. So now basically are refining that movement. We can even go with the right arm, and I suspect there will be trouble for that, so let's follow the same procedure. So picking session, let's choose right hand like this, and it is actually working as it should, but I have to turn off this maintain original, and of course I have to offset in this case, so 90. I should have done correctional shapes for these shoulders, but that's not really important right now. And see, I'm refining the shape, and the problem here is I suspect pole of this right hand. So let's see, and actually it is. So basically I'm trying to show you some basics of motion capturing and retargeting, and this can become really complicated in small amount of time, and I really hope I've given you enough info. And in case of this motion capturing and retargeting, there are ways to build sophisticated setups that really include some dummy rigs that will receive the animation and then constrain the original rig to that dummy rig, but that is far beyond the scope of this training volume, because I really wanted to concentrate on this builder and see motion. So this motion capturing is also a vast subject, so I really hope that you manage to pick up a few things, and that you will be able to import motion capturing files and apply them to your rigs and animate as you wish. One thing that is also worth mentioning, you can bake that motion capturing into motion clip and mix that with other motion clips that you have, so the possibilities are simply endless. Now, I told you that I will show you something with a pose morph tag, and I haven't forgot. And that is, if you really don't mind that your rig that you made with the character builder, you can actually delete this female rig, and this will be a lot clearer. So let's say that you build a rig from a mocap template. So let's say maybe Mixamo once again. So let's say an arm, let's say a leg, and let me just show you something that is really interesting. So what if you want to quickly position these guys exactly to the position of these guys? Well, you can do that by making this rig editable, and if you do so by hitting C button, you'll actually see that you don't have much in the way of fancy stuff in the rig. It's completely the same joint hierarchy, and we have some tags here which we can freely delete. And for this to work, for this transfer with pose morph to work, you have to have identical hierarchies. Now this null object here, this Mixamo scale, which stands for Mixamo skeleton, is not present in our motion capture data. So let's get rid of that, and now we have completely the same hierarchies from this point here and this point here. So we can add a pose morph tag, which is found also on a character menu like this. We will enable hierarchy, which really instructs this pose morph tag to transfer objects contained within hierarchy also, and we will enable position. Now, some of you are probably acquainted with morphs, but I'm pretty sure most of you didn't know that you can use a target here and custom target. So I will use this complete hierarchy as a target. Now watch carefully what will happen. Our main rig, our motion capture rig we created from builder, rescaled and adjusted itself automatically to be exactly the same in manner of proportions with this motion capture data. Now This is because all the values, all the position values from this motion capture data are now considered as a target. Now, this works from this point in hierarchy. Now, this guy is different. This guy is a master, and it is not affected by this pose morph tag. And hopefully I'm not overcomplicating things. And if I reset the position for this guy, you will see that these joints, actually I could even do a delete without children. You see that now these two hierarchies are completely the same. So we use the pose morph tag to transfer position of all objects in hierarchy to this new target. So if you don't mind your object that is binded to this rig to be a little bit rescaled or stretched, you can go with this technique. Now, if I hide the motion capture data, this is what will happen. Okay, so now it's only driving the position values. You can turn rotation, so this is what will happen. So use this pose morph to your advantage. Also, I probably should have made the left arm and the left leg. That would be much better, but it is what it is. And I really hope you like this lesson and that you will utilize all these techniques to work with motion capturing files. And that's it. Let's continue with our next lesson.